The White Sox are awful. Go back a few years ago though, and the conversation was completely different, with many saying they were a team capable of winning the World Series. Over the last few seasons though, that hasn't gone to plan, and now the White Sox are the worst team in baseball. In this video, I dive into the rise and fall of the Southsiders. Let's get to it. To start things off, let's get caught up to speed and see how we got here in the first place. After winning a World Series in 2005 and making it to the postseason again in 2008, the White Sox would go on to only have a winning record in 2 of the next 4 seasons. This was despite having some talented players like Paul Konerko, AJ Pierzynski, Alexi Ramirez, Alex Rios, and Adam Dunn, along with solid pitching which included Mark Burley, Chris Sale, Jake Peavy, and John Danks. They also had a World Series winning manager in Ozzie Guillen, who would depart for the Marlins in 2012. After this, they went on to hire a former player in Robin Ventura. While the White Sox would only experience 1 winning season under Ventura from 2012 to 2016, they did bring in some talented players during this time, including a can't-miss hitter in Jose Abreu, who defected from Cuba, as well as first-round picks Tim Anderson and Carlos Rodon. After 2016, with the White Sox fan base growing tired of Ventura, he decided to resign after only 1 winning season with him leading the way, despite having some talented players. This paved the way for bench coach Rick Renteria, who had managed the Cubs before they replaced him with Joe Madden en route to their World Series championship. With Renteria running the show, this period of time for the White Sox was a tough one, as they essentially went into rebuild mode. Over the next few seasons, the White Sox would flounder near the bottom of Major League Baseball, but would slowly start to piece together a lot of talent within their organization. This included several higher draft picks, including Jake Berger, Nick Madrigal, 3rd overall pick Andrew Vaughn, and Garrett Crochet. There were also some prospects acquired after trading away Major League talent, including Yohan Moncada and Michael Kopech for Chris Sale, Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez for Jose Quintana, and Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Dane Dunning for Adam Eaton. There was also the signing of the highly regarded Luis Robert, a 19-year-old international prospect with a superstar potential who defected from Cuba. After all the dust had settled, the White Sox had a top 5 prospect in all of baseball on 3 separate occasions. Yohan Moncada in 2017 when he was ranked 2nd overall, Eloy Jimenez in 2018 when he was ranked 4th and also 3rd in 2019, and Luis Robert in 2020 when he was ranked 3rd. The White Sox farm system ranked 4th on Baseball America's farm system rankings in 2018, and they had 5 prospects in the top 50 on MLB Pipeline going into 2019, including Luis Robert, Michael Kopech, Andrew Vaughn, Dylan Cease, and Nick Madrigal, along with already possessing former first-round picks Tim Anderson and Carlos Rodon. After 1 more losing season, it was time for the White Sox to step on the gas heading into 2020. They proceeded to have a busy offseason, including signing one of the best catchers in baseball in Yasmani Grandal, former Cy Young winner Dallas Keuchel, and multiple-time All-Star Edwin Encarnacion, who hit 34 home runs the year prior. One thing that I do think hurt the White Sox that was out of their control was the 2020 COVID season. They got off to a great start that year and had a record of 34-18, the 3rd best record in the majors and 2nd best in the American League, but they proceeded to lose 7 of their last 8 games to finish with a record of 35-25 to finish 1 game behind the Twins in the Central Division. This caused them to fall to the 7th seed, creating a matchup against the 2 seed Oakland A's, where they would fall in 3 games. While it will be a big what if, momentum is a big factor in baseball, and perhaps with a full 162 game season, the White Sox destiny could have been a bit different. Nonetheless, the White Sox remained focused heading into 2021. They once again had a big offseason, signing one of the top closers in the game in Liam Hendriks to a big 4-year, $55 million contract. They also made a trade for veteran starter Lance Lynn to help bolster their rotation, who was coming off a solid season with the Rangers. The biggest headline move, though, was the hiring of Hall of Fame manager Tony La Russa, who had won 3 World Series championships in his career. This drew split reactions, as some loved the experience he would bring, but some weren't a fan of it as they thought he didn't fit into today's era, while others felt it was simply White Sox owner Jerry Reindorf hiring a close friend and felt Rick Renteria got a bad deal. Nonetheless, the White Sox looked very strong heading into the 2021 season, with multiple people picking them to not only win the AL Central, but to also get to the World Series, and some even having them win the whole thing. They had a strong rotation with Carlos Rodon, even though he was coming off a down year, Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, Dylan Cease, and Dallas Keuchel. A lineup full of stars, a bullpen that featured the best closer in the game in Hendriks, and young stars like Michael Kopech and Garrett Crochet, and a Hall of Fame manager at the helm. On paper, everything looked great, and for the most part, things were looking that way in the early going as they got a no-hitter from Carlos Rodon, 4 of their players were voted to the All-Star game, and they even got a Linsanity run from their number 22 prospect who had just gotten called up, Yermín Mercedes. However, despite all of this, there were some flaws and some bumps, starting with the Hall of Fame manager himself. There was the incident with the prior mentioned Yermín Mercedes, who hit a home run on a 3-0 pitch off a position player late in the game that resulted in a 16-4 blowout against the Twins. Tony La Russa called it a big mistake, as he said it went against the unwritten rules of the game. Mercedes, who was hitting .364 with an OPS near 1100 and 6 home runs at the time, proceeded to hit .162 over his next 32 games and was sent back down to the minor leagues, only to be never seen again that year. While people understood what Tony La Russa was trying to say, many people far and wide stood up for Mercedes, including teammate Lance Lynn, who said, "The more I play this game, the more those unwritten rules have gone away. If you have a problem with whatever happened, then put a picture out there." On top of this, there were questionable in-game calls such as bullpen management, as well as pinch hit opportunities, including one instance when Luis Robert was kept on the bench in a close game in the 8th inning, but La Russa opted to have Billy Hamilton and Lurie Garcia hit because he was looking for a single there. There was also not taking starting pitchers out at the right time, including a start where Lucas Giolito went back out for the 7th inning, but La Russa didn't realize that he was gassed. I think it was safe to say La Russa was a bit out of touch with today's game. In the end, though, the White Sox managed to win 93 games that season, but ended up losing in the division round to the eventual American League champion Houston Astros. This was a hard pill to swallow because this White Sox team had a top 5 offense according to Fangraphs, a top 3 rotation, and the highest ranked bullpen. Carlos Rodon, Dylan Cease, Lance Lynn, and Lucas Giolito all finished in the top 20 in Fangraph wins above replacement among all starting pitchers, and both Liam Hendriks and Garrett Crochet ranked in the top 25 among all relievers, with Hendriks ranking number 1 overall. So, what was the problem? Well, I mentioned the offense ranked in the top 5, but there was a bit of an issue. The White Sox lineup suffered a lot of injuries in 2021, including Luis Robert, who did hit well, but was limited to 68 games, Eloy Jimenez, who was limited to 55, Yasmani Grandal, who missed most of July and August, Nick Madrigal, who had season-ending hamstring surgery, and even Tim Anderson missed some time. There was also the 3rd overall pick from 2019, Andrew Vaughn, who was pretty much rushed up after not being given much time to develop in the minor leagues and was mostly playing in the outfield, a position that just wasn't best suited for him. This leads me to the next point, and what I think is an incredibly overlooked part of the game, the defense. The White Sox defense in 2021 was abysmal, as they ranked 25th overall, 28th in defensive runs saved, and 18th in outs above average. And Grandal's defense behind the plate had also taken a big dip, while backup catcher Zach Collins was one of the worst defensive catchers in the game, which didn't help, especially with Grandal missing time. There was also one other factor I haven't mentioned yet. Remember how I said the White Sox bullpen was the best in baseball? Well, they were overall, but in the second half, they took a bit of a hit. At the trade deadline, they made a big move by acquiring closer Craig Kimbrell from the Cubs, which gave the White Sox a ridiculously good-looking bullpen. Well, that didn't go quite to plan, as Kimbrell did not take well to the setup role, as he posted an ERA over 5 and also had 3 blown saves. When you add it all up, it seemed like when you combine Tony La Russa not seeming to be on the same page with everyone in the clubhouse, along with possibly not fitting into today's game, the inconsistencies with players staying on the field, a bad defense, and a bit of a shaky bullpen in the second half, this was a team that was deeply flawed despite having tons of talent. With a disappointing season in the rearview mirror, the White Sox continue to aim high heading into 2022, despite Carlos Rodon leaving for the Giants, as they replaced Kimbrell with Kendall Graveman and Joe Kelly, and added yet another top international star in Oscar Colas. In the end, though, all of this was for naught, as they limped the entire way through, playing .500 ball the whole season to finish with a record of 81-81. Robert, Jimenez, Grandal, and even Tim Anderson had trouble staying on the field. A durable rotation in 2021 started showing cracks as Lynn was suffering injuries, while Dallas Keuchel proved to be a bust. And the bullpen wasn't as sharp as it was the year prior, along with the fact that Garrett Crochet needed to get Tommy John. And in the end, Tony La Russa's tumultuous run with the White Sox came to an end as he continued to have problems with his in-game calling, as well as his health off the field. He was eventually replaced by Pedro Grifol, but he hasn't really worked out either. After the 2022 season, the White Sox fired general manager Rick Hahn and executive vice president Kenny Williams. In 2023, the fate of the White Sox started to set in, as they were 16 games under 500 in the first half, ended up selling at the deadline, and also received incredibly tough news from Liam Hendriks, who announced he had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but he's doing a lot better today. They also had young players like Yohan Moncada, Andrew Vaughn, and Michael Kopech start to stagnate with their development, as all three saw their numbers dip. This could suggest that while the White Sox were able to bring up a lot of talent initially, they had issues with keeping that development sustained. There was also the prior mentioned international signing Oscar Colas, who was called up in 2023 but only hit .216 with a .571 OPS over 75 games. Later on, they hired former player Chris Getz as the new general manager, but his time there hasn't exactly been smooth. While he has traded away multiple pieces to acquire many prospects, he's only acquired 2 top 100 prospects in Edgar Quero and Drew Thorpe. As for this trade deadline, they didn't receive any players back from the Cardinals in the Erick Fedde trade, despite them receiving Erick Fedde was considered terrible to trade with at the deadline, and he didn't move Garrett Crochet or Luis Robert in a widely criticized trade deadline. So the final question is this: why didn't the White Sox become a dynasty or even get a bit closer to winning a World Series? Well, in the end, as the old saying goes, success or failure always trickles from the top, so perhaps owner Jerry Reinsdorf needs to reevaluate how he's running the ship, or simply step away. So those are my thoughts on the White Sox. Tell me your thoughts down below. What else do you think has led to the downfall of the White Sox? But that's all I got for right now. If you counted the way out, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.